Gabriel lived in the small town of Everhope, a quiet community where everyone knew everyone. It was a picturesque place, especially at Christmas, when the streets were decorated with bright lights and garlands that swayed gently in the icy wind. For the locals, Christmas was synonymous with togetherness, but for Gabriel, this year seemed different. For the past few months, something inexplicable had been happening in his life. He couldn't name it, but he felt as if a transformation was taking place. It was as if a greater force was moving the pieces of his existence, leading him towards a greater purpose that he didn't yet understand. This change, however, did not come without consequences. Slowly, Gabriel realized that the people around him were acting differently. Once solid friendships seemed fragile. Lively conversations became tense or non-existent. And instead of feeling joy at being in his company, many simply drifted away. On the evening of Christmas Eve, Gabriel sat in the central square, surrounded by lights and the distant music of a choir. He wondered what was going on, what had changed, and more importantly, what did it mean? He didn't know that that night would be the beginning of a transformative journey. The first sign of the change began with the withdrawal of those close to him. Gabriel noticed how some friends who used to come to him every day now seemed to avoid him. Messages went unanswered, invitations were declined, and even chance encounters at the bakery or market were accompanied by an awkward silence. He tried to ignore it, believing that perhaps it was just a coincidence. However, the closer he got to his spirituality and tried to live in line with a greater purpose, the more evident the estrangement became. He began to feel the weight of loneliness. In that same bakery, where he used to have coffee with friends, Gabriel noticed something strange. A table full of colleagues who seemed to be laughing and chatting animatedly. But when he entered, the glances turned away and the laughter subsided. He tried to pretend he didn't notice, but the annoyance remained there, like a shadow. What Gabriel didn't know was that this withdrawal was a natural reaction to the transformation he was experiencing. His energy, once familiar, now resonated at a higher frequency, and this intimidated those who were not yet ready to face their own truths. While some turned away, others showed the opposite behavior. Strangers began to treat Gabriel with unusual generosity. The attendant at the bakery insisted on giving her coffee without charge, saying it was a gift. The cobbler, known for being grumpy, offered to repair his shoes for free. A lady at the market gave him a bag of apples, saying that she felt he needed them. These gestures, although well-meaning, left Gabriel confused. He didn't think he was special. Why did so many people act this way? The truth was that Gabriel's presence radiated something that he still didn't fully understand. His energy touched people on a deep level, awakening in them a desire to give something back, even without knowing exactly why. However, this generosity also had its challenging side. Some people began to expect something in return. Gabriel began to notice looks of expectation, as if his mere existence should repay the favors received. This made him uncomfortable, but he understood that he needed to balance accepting these gestures with the need to protect his inner peace. Even more confusing behavior began to emerge. People who had previously supported him began to offer a strange kind of encouragement. They seemed happy for him, but there was a tone in their words that planted doubts. "You're doing so well, Gabriel. But have you ever wondered if this path isn't the right one?" suggested a former mentor during a conversation. This combination of praise and doubt made Gabriel think. Was he doing something wrong? Was his search for purpose really valid? What he didn't realize at the time was that this support was actually an expression of jealousy. Some people felt uncomfortable watching Gabriel grow, and instead of celebrating him, tried to bring him back into their comfort zone. If some moved away, others couldn't stay away. Gabriel began to notice how some people seemed almost obsessed with his presence. They came to him incessantly, seeking advice or just hanging around, as if hoping to absorb something of his energy. This happened so often that Gabriel began to feel suffocated. No matter where he went, someone seemed to follow in his footsteps, always looking for more than he could offer. This behavior made him realize that, although his light attracted people, he needed to protect his own energy. Helping others was part of his mission, but he needed to do this without losing himself in the process. Gabriel had always been a compassionate person, someone who valued harmony in relationships. He made a point of treating everyone with respect, of listening when they needed support, and of celebrating other people's achievements with sincerity. However, in recent months, he began to notice something that hurt him deeply: unexpected rejection from people close to him. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible. Small comments, changes in tone of voice, delays in replying to messages. But soon it grew into obvious distancing and, in some cases, disguised hostility. Gabriel couldn't understand why. He hadn't had a fight with anyone or done anything to justify such behavior. Even so, his presence seemed to bother him. Tomas, a longtime friend, was a clear example of this. Gabriel and Tomas had shared many important moments over the years, from childhood pranks to deep conversations in their youth. Recently, however, Tomas had seemed cold and distant. In a chance encounter in the square, Gabriel commented excitedly about a new opportunity he had received at work. He expected Tomas to share his joy, but instead he heard an acid comment. "Good for you. Not everyone gets these chances, you know." Gabriel remained silent, surprised by the response. Tomas had always been supportive and friendly, but now he seemed resentful. Gabriel tried to bring up the subject on another occasion, but was met with apathetic apologies or changes of subject. This didn't just happen with Tomas. In a meeting at work, Gabriel proposed an idea that could benefit the whole team. A colleague, who had previously been collaborative, abruptly interrupted. "I don't think that's that practical. Maybe you're dreaming too big." Later, the same person presented Gabriel's idea as his own, to applause from everyone. Gabriel felt betrayed, but kept silent, as he didn't want to fuel any conflicts. These moments became frequent, and Gabriel began to wonder what was wrong. He even thought that he was the problem, that perhaps he was acting arrogantly or unconsciously. But the truth was different. The rejection he faced was a reflection of the jealousy his presence aroused. Like Joseph in the Bible, who was rejected by his brothers because of his dreams and God's favor, Gabriel was living a modern version of this story. His light and determination made others see, even if they didn't want to, their own insecurities. For some, this was unbearable. It was easier to reject Gabriel than to face their own feelings of inadequacy. Gabriel began to understand that this rejection was not about him. It wasn't his responsibility to carry the emotional burdens of others. Even so, he felt the weight of this behavior, and each new episode was a painful reminder that his path, although enlightened, would be lonely at times. If open rejection was painful, willful ignorance was a silent but equally deep wound. Gabriel began to notice how some people who once made a point of acknowledging him now acted as if he were invisible. On social media, it was obvious. Gabriel would post about something important, like a community project he had organized to raise food for needy families, and the people who had previously interacted with him would simply ignore him. At the same time, these same people would comment on and praise other people's trivial posts, such as photos of lunches or trips. This indifference was even clearer at social gatherings. During a Christmas party at a neighbor's house, Gabriel noticed how some acquaintances made a point of looking away or pretending to be busy with other conversations when he approached. There was one particularly disconcerting moment. Gabriel was in the market when he bumped into Elisa, an old school friend. He greeted her with a warm smile, but Elisa barely looked up from her cell phone and replied with a dry one. "Hi." She didn't ask how he was, nor did she try to start a conversation. Instead, she hurried away, as if the mere act of recognizing him was uncomfortable. Gabriel began to realize that this ignorance wasn't casual. It was a choice. For some people, ignoring him was a way of diminishing his importance, a subtle attempt to make him question his worth. This strategy, although silent, was corrosive. Gabriel began to doubt himself. Was he overdoing it by trying to share his achievements? Was he being inconvenient without realizing it? Over time, he understood that willful ignorance was a form of power for those who felt insecure. Acknowledging Gabriel's brilliance would mean admitting that they needed to deal with their own shadows, something not everyone was ready to do. He decided that he would not allow this indifference to shake him. He understood that his mission didn't depend on the validation of others, and that his light didn't need applause to keep shining. Gabriel began to notice a pattern in his social interactions. Whenever he shared an achievement or a positive moment, some people around him didn't know how to react in a genuine way. Instead of celebrating with him, as someone who was truly happy about his success would do, they quickly shifted the focus to themselves. It was as if Gabriel's happiness activated in them an irresistible need to assert themselves. At a Christmas dinner with friends, Gabriel shared, in a simple way, an experience that had transformed his outlook on life. "This year, I had the chance to help out at the city shelter. It was incredible to see how small actions can make such a big difference to people's lives." Before he could continue, a friend, Julio, interrupted. "Wow, that's great, Gabriel. Coincidentally, I've also been to something similar. I took part in an event at the company club. It was an absolute success. I managed to raise much more than they expected, and they even asked me to lead the next campaign." The other friends started asking Julio questions, leaving Gabriel's story in the background. He didn't resent it, but he couldn't ignore the recurrence of this kind of behavior. It happened frequently, not just between friends. At work, for example, Gabriel mentioned in a meeting that he had been invited to lead an innovation initiative in the sector. He thought this might inspire others to get more involved. But right after he spoke, a colleague, Carlos, took the floor. "That's great, Gabriel. You reminded me of the project I led at the beginning of the year. It was challenging, but thanks to me, the team managed to hit all the targets." Gabriel wasn't surprised. He had expected this kind of response from Carlos, as it was a constant feature of their interactions. Carlos wasn't interested in listening to Gabriel. He used any opportunity to highlight himself. The constant display of achievements was common behavior among those who, upon seeing Gabriel's brilliance, felt the need to protect their own insecurities. They competed, even if Gabriel wasn't playing the same game. In a moment of introspection, Gabriel began to reflect on these behaviors. He knew he wasn't perfect, but he was also sure that his intention had never been to compete or belittle anyone. So why did so many people seem to see him as a threat? He realized that the need to compete, to show off achievements, was an emotional armor that many people wore to mask their insecurities. Some people, when they see someone else's success, feel challenged. It's as if their victory forces them to confront their own failings or lack of progress in their lives. Gabriel decided that he would not let this affect him. He understood that his journey was unique and that he didn't need to compare himself to others. Just as he had learned to celebrate the victories of others, he hoped that in time, these people would learn too. But until then, he would keep his focus. He wouldn't let others' need to show off dim the light of his own purpose. If there was one thing that really tested Gabriel's patience, it was when people started blaming him for the problems they faced. He had always been someone willing to help, someone who offered support without expecting anything in return. But recently, this altruism began to be unfairly exploited. It all started subtly, with a casual comment from a friend, Arthur, who was having difficulties at work. During a conversation, Gabriel suggested that Arthur try a more assertive approach with his boss. A few days later, Arthur returned, clearly irritated. "The idea you gave me didn't work. Now my boss is angrier than before. I knew I shouldn't have listened to you." Gabriel remained silent, surprised. He had never imposed his opinion, but now he was being blamed for something he couldn't control. "You were chosen to shine, not to please." This phrase resonated deeply in his soul. He realized that all the pain, challenges, and negative reactions from the people around him were actually confirmations that he was on the right path. His light was disturbing because it made others see their own shadows, and not everyone was ready to deal with that. When the choir finished their last song, Gabriel felt a peace he hadn't experienced for months. He walked out of the church and looked up at the starry sky. The snow was falling softly, and the silence of the night seemed to welcome him. Gabriel's journey teaches us that being chosen is not an easy task, but it is a calling full of purpose. Just as he faced challenges, you too may be going through times when your light bothers or challenges others. To help you find strength and clarity, I recommend the devotional, The Chosen, 40 Days with Jesus. This devotional offers a powerful journey of reflection, helping you to understand how your life is connected to a greater purpose. Just as Gabriel found peace and meaning in his journey, you can too. This Christmas, I invite you to reflect. What does it mean to be chosen in your life? How do you deal with the challenges that arise when people around you see your light? Share your experiences in the comments. I want to know how you have faced these situations and how we can strengthen each other together. I'm George, your friend and spiritual guide, and I'm here to remind you that you're not alone. May this Christmas be a time of renewal, hope, and purpose for you. Sparkles.